On the evening of August 22, 1978, visitors packed the galleries of the United States Senate to witness a historic vote. The subject is a proposed amendment to the Constitution that would give residents in the District of Columbia voting representation in both houses of Congress. Although the House of Representatives has already approved the amendment and the leadership of both parties in the Senate have announced their support, the outcome promises to be very close. Finally, when all the votes have been declared, the amendment passes 67 to 32, a two-thirds majority with just one vote to spare. Applause breaks out on the Senate floor and in the galleries above. A jubilant Senator Edward Kennedy declares the vote a victory for justice and equality. Having been approved by both houses, the constitutional amendment can now be sent to the states for ratification. The states, however, strongly disagreed with Congress, and the amendment failed to be ratified. This was the first time in the nation's history that an amendment expanding the franchise failed ratification. Since then, other initiatives to secure statehood for the district and to acquire voting representation through legislation have also failed. The status of the District of Columbia has a long history as one of the nation's most enduring constitutional issues. The framers had provided for a federal district in the hope of avoiding jealousies among the states. They feared that an unfair advantage might be given to the state where the nation's capital was located. Therefore, the Constitution provided for the creation of a federal district and gave Congress exclusive legislative authority over it. In 1790, Congress agreed upon a location along the Potomac River. The following year, President George Washington selected a 10-mile square that included portions of Virginia and Maryland. In the November 1800 elections, residents of this area exercised their federal voting rights for the last time. Less than a month later, the city of Washington, in the territory of Columbia, officially came into existence. As early as 1801, reformers were calling for the reenfranchisement of District of Columbia residents. But during most of the 2 centuries that followed, residents were denied both representation in Congress and self-government. However, in the decades after World War II, the push for self-government in the district gained momentum. It was endorsed by national leaders of both parties and aided by the civil rights initiatives of the 1950s and 60s. With the ratification of the 23rd Amendment in 1961, district residents were finally allowed to vote in presidential elections. In 1970, Congress granted the district a non-voting member in the House of Representatives, and 3 years later, provided for a large measure of self-government. Advocates of representation for the district have invoked one of the nation's founding principles: no taxation without representation. They stressed the unfairness of leaving more than 500,000 American citizens without equal representation in the national government. But those opposed to the district's representation have raised important constitutional issues. They maintain that only states can send representatives to Congress. Granting the District of Columbia statehood would give it that unfair advantage the framers sought to avoid. Opponents also point out that because of the district's unique relationship with the federal government, its interests are already well represented in the halls of Congress.